Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That's the podcast that improves itself, improves ourselves, and improves the self in general. My name is Ty, I'm going to be your host, and today I'm joined by my remarkable co-host, Distance. So we're continuing like an unofficial series that we've got going on here. Today we're going to be talking about the concept of stress. I feel like this connects very well with the last episode we did. And actually, like, while I was trying to prepare for this episode, pretty much everything that I looked up for involving stress also mentioned anxiety. They seem to go hand in hand in so many ways. Like every YouTube video I saw that was like dealing with stress was also like dealing with stress and anxiety, or like, you know, everything was like stress and anxiety. So it seems to be a good flow then between these two episodes. So it kind of brings up like the first thing that I wanted to talk about was where do you draw the line between stress and anxiety? Because there seems to be a lot of crossover between the two. I mean, I know they are different things, but it seems like that a lot of the emotions and a lot of the fallout, a lot of what you feel tends to be like a gray area between the two. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if I'd agree with that completely, because I think that one is a stimulus, whereas the other one's almost an effect. Like the feeling of anxiety, stress is like, well, I guess stress is the feeling and the stressor is the thing that's stressing you out. But I think that we often use stress as a noun.
Yes.
So you could be feeling stress or you could be going through some stress. So, I mean, if you're going to think of them as feelings, which I guess you can define them as that too. God, this is so semantic. Ugh. I just got so semantic with it. If you define it as like a feeling, I think that one is like the thing that's causing the one is the thing that's pushing you out of where you're comfortable. And the other thing is sort of like a result of being pushed out of where you're comfortable.
Okay.
But I don't know, like, honestly, like, I never really think of stress as being a feeling. I think of it as more of a noun. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's also the verb. Like a lot of times you do say like, I am stressed, you know, or like, but it is still, I get what you're saying. Like, it's not necessarily a feeling. It's more of like a state of being, right?
Yeah, because anxiety tends to like, so you get like a feeling of like tension or pressure or discomfort from stress.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think that anxiety sort of starts to create that kind of worry about it. So I think that, I mean, I would imagine there would be concurrent things. I mean, you're going to be feeling stressed out. A lot of the time I feel anxiety before I know stress is going to happen.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then or when I start to feel some kind of stress about something, typically it's because something needs to be done, or something is happening that I need to react to. And then that's like when the anxiety sort of starts to set in, that I'm like, yeah, can I do this? I don't know. And I sit there and just keep overthinking everything that happens. Like, dude, for instance, I can tell you, I forget what day it was, but I was making this recipe where you basically char broccoli in the oven.
Ooh,
and so you crank that shit to 500 degrees. So you put the pan in the oven to let it preheat, like the baking sheet, because you want it to be really hot because you're trying to char them.
Yeah.
So I opened the oven to pull the baking sheet out, and my oven's on fire. And I'm like, fuck.
Have you just not cleaned it in a while, or what?
So yeah, apparently there's a lot of chicken fat down there, I think, and the smoke point of chicken fat's very low.
Gotcha.
So I was like, oh shit. So like my girlfriend's in the kitchen and I closed the door. I'm like, my oven is on fire. She's like, what? I'm like, okay, all right, turn the oven off. The oven's off. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, oxygen. All right, I'm gonna cover the vent on top of the stove for the oven. Okay, no air, no oxygen, no burn. Okay. But the thing is like for some reason I wasn't that freaked out about it.
That's good. Yeah.
And she was almost disturbed at how calm I was. I mean, because I was like doing things, but there was some anxiety about like, so what happens now? Like, yeah, have I been okay? Do I have good renter's insurance? Yeah, I think I do. And like just kind of freaking out for a minute. But basically all that happened is it burned all the fat off the bottom of the oven, and then it ran out of fuel. So my oven's clean now.
That's good.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Also, there was some stuff I couldn't get off of that baking sheet that's now off of it. which is also nice. But I mean, like, I think that obviously opening your oven and seeing that it's on fire causes some degree of stress. And in the midst of that, the anticipation of needing to do something is going to make you anxious. But I think that once I did it, it was kind of like all stress and no anxiety. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And that is a good way to draw the line between the two.
Yeah.
One thing is stressing me out right now. And I don't want to segue like too far away, but what happened to the bike behind you? Where's your bike at?
It's on the maintenance stand behind me.
Okay.
You know what? Actually, you know what? Here, look. Will it make you feel better if I put it up there?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was just looking at the camera. I was like, what the hell's going on? I can totally
interrupt the hell out of this podcast.
No, it's all good.
Bike up there.
It is all good. It is all good.
I mean, I forgot. I wrote it the other day, so I put it up on the stand to do some maintenance. We
both fucked up. Your bike is gone and my Infinity Gauntlet is off. I just realized that. Yeah, so yeah, we both messed up, but it's okay. We got different backgrounds this week.
Yeah, it looks really weird with the little thingy that like I put on the top tube just hanging on the wall.
Mm-hmm. It does look strange, yeah.
That's all I'm gonna see now. Shit.
All right, but so anyways, so what is stress actually? The definition of just the word is like a pressure, tension, or strain, right? Because you can talk about stress in the sense of like a physical stress to an object where you talk about something being stressed. But of course, we're talking about it in the emotional sense. What is the best way to say that? Existential stress? Like, what is the...
I don't know. Human biological stress?
I get, yeah. But I mean, even that, like, you could put like physical stress on a biological being. So it's like mental stress. I guess maybe.
Well, I mean, it's really all kinds of stress in this case. I mean, I would include like, I guess we're thinking about mental and emotional particularly, but we'll probably touch on physical at some point because we'll have to, like for a human.
Yeah.
Because analogies.
Well, the first thing that it made me wonder is so figuring out like what stress is, trying to isolate why we experience stress, where it comes from. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. A lot of it makes me wonder, it feels like it's a symptom of the modern life that we've created. I wonder how much, like, do you think that humans, 60,000, 70,000 years ago were experiencing stress? Or was it a different, is that the name that you would call it? I guess like if you're in a life or death situation, and an animal's gonna try to kill you, is that actually stress, or is that more of like when you're in a fight or flight response? I guess that is still stress, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would call anything that requires an adaptive response would be like stress, or anything that can cause your body to have to adapt, or something that can make you uncomfortable, or anything that's like threatening your survival. I mean, I would call that stress for sure.
Okay.
I think the type of stresses that we have are much different. I mean,
yes.
There was no car payment before, so like you're not going to be stressed out about making that, or car for that matter.
Yep. I think that's maybe where my mind went is in the preparation for this episode, everything I looked at to try to get some notes together, it was always talking about, are you stressed from work? Are you stressed from a relationship? It just seemed to be like always pointing to these facets of what is basically modern life. But I guess that is a good point. I kind of thought of it in a completely backwards manner of like, oh, well, that means that stress is just a modern thing. But it's like, no, hold on. The reasons why we are stressed now, we are in a completely different world than they were before. There are still stressors that ancient people would have to deal with. We just don't have them at all anymore. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like somewhat naive ideas about like how great everything must have been before civilization and all that. And maybe generally speaking, without getting into like a other conversation altogether, generally speaking, I mean, I'm sure that ecosystem and land space was probably much better then, but as far as like quality of life, generally speaking, for humans, I'm sure it's probably much better now.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I would argue that it was probably simpler then, but I don't think that means better in any way.
Yeah, I mean, simpler then would have been survive or don't.
Exactly. Yeah. Like your quality of life was probably way poorer, but the number of things you needed to consider and worry about was much smaller.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, I guess it really depends because there's a lot of stuff that we probably are taking for granted now that we don't
True.
even realize were things that would have needed to be considered by the the first primate to walk upright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, the things that you don't really think about that. The things that I mean, like you just said, that you take for granted. We don't even consider them luxuries anymore. They're just like the facets of modern life that you're probably even irritated or pissed when they don't work the way that you want them to. But it's like, something that would have been literally a miracle for people not even that long ago. But
like a little switch in 2 rooms in my apartment that gives me water that I can drink immediately is pretty damn cool.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there's fizzy stuff in this bottle of water, and the fact that this water's in a bottle, and the fact that this plastic even fucking exists, pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also, I mean, honestly, that's not even like a difference of time thing. We talk about that a lot, where we'll compare things to like ancient humans or trying to like look back, but it's sad that there's a large number of people existing right now on planet Earth that's a true statement for. I remember seeing something that was like, if you're in the United States and reading this, you take a shit into water that is cleaner than most of the world gets to drink.
Yep.
And that's a really like startling thing to realize that, like, I mean, that's something obviously that we take for granted. Just, I mean, a toilet is like, there's no reason for that water to actually be that clean. And it's like, we are shitting into like actual drinking water that, Yep. Well, yeah. I mean, sorry, that's a little bit off the topic of stress, but that is stressful, right? I mean,
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's, so we could even compare it to like people in other places that are less fortunate than like prosperous Western countries. And the reason why I say, I'm not saying that only Western countries are prosperous, but that's the one that we live in. So yeah.
True. Yeah. So that's our frame of reference to compare to, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, so then what do you have anything to talk about as far as like, what is stress? How do you identify, when you're feeling stress, I guess, or when a situation is stressful? I mean, because like you said, you don't really think of it as much of an emotion, right? So you look at it as, how would you word that question then? If I'm trying to ask you, when do you identify stress? It's not when do you identify feeling stress. It's when do you identify a stressor, or?
Yeah, because like I can identify that a thing itself or an event itself is stress is just because of physiological responses. I mean, it feels like it's interesting because our response to those things is not that different than another mammal fending off a predator. Like, it's really not that different. I mean, the things that are going on are pretty similar. I think that we perceive a lot of these things as a threat to our survival. And in some ways, I mean, they kind of are, sort of, I guess. I don't know. If it's something...
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I can just tell because there's a physiological thing that's going on. Like, I feel edgy. I feel tight. Like, my shoulders feel really tight. I feel very tense. And I tend to kind of rush through things. And I'll kind of be a dick.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not on purpose. If I catch myself doing it, I'll sort of try to stop. But there's that too.
Well, is it actually like being a dick, or is it just being short and trying to make good use of time, like being short, brief, and blunt, right?
I can give you an example, and you can tell me if this is being a jerk or not.
Okay.
So someone asked me a question. So for any viewers that don't know, I'm an IT guy. So somebody asked me a question about something that was more or less didn't really matter. They didn't really need to know. And I asked them, what value will you derive from actually knowing the answer to that question? So because if it's more value than the time that it'll take for me to explain, then that's fine. If not, let us not waste my time or yours.
Yeah, I don't think that that's actually being a dick. I think that in the society we live in now, we're expected to have certain courtesies that are actually above and beyond most situations, if that makes sense. So I feel like in that situation, what you were doing is kind of what I was getting at. It's like if you recognize that a situation is stressful, I think that you are instinctively going to want to make the best use of time and realize that, like, okay, we need to do A, B, and C to get out of this situation. Let's get that done, rather than wasting time with things in between. So I would say that, yeah, I don't think your answer was actually being a dick. It was just, trying to be as time efficient as possible and saying, like, okay, well, is this actually going to help us get out of stressful situation? No, then let's knock out these other things. But with that being said, I mean, like I was saying, yeah, we do kind of live in a world where, I mean, especially like with us living here in the South, there's this level of courtesy that is expected, right? That is kind of like a little ridiculous, honestly, right? Like, I mean, when you go to a store, like, you don't need to have, like, I mean, I've seen it before where traveling in the North, you go to a store, you can have an interaction with a cashier that is very blunt, direct, has no exchanges of the courtesies that we do here. And I think many people from the South would be like, man, they were being a dick. It's like, well, no, they were just getting in and out of that transaction. It doesn't require saying, hey, how are you? And how was your day? And things like that.
I actually told somebody today that I'm actually tired of answering the question, how are you doing?
Yeah. It's a stupid fucking question.
Yeah. Then I told the person, like, the reason why I don't ask you how you're doing is because I don't care. I was like, I mean, and I'm not, it would be disingenuous of me to ask you how you're doing when I don't care. I'd prefer to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said something about how it was, I can't remember. It wasn't like, I don't know, I said something about like efficient usage of time. And the guy was like, that's deep. And I was like, no, it's not. It's just logic.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm just making a value judgment here. There's nothing deep about it. But yeah, whatever. But kind of beside the point. But yes, I think that when I am stressed, I tend to give up on, and maybe perhaps the reason why you mentioned that is because I tend to give up on those expected kind of pleasantries in the region that we live in, because it's just more practical that way.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, being super, like pleasant or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think instinctively you recognize that it's like the more I do that, the more stressful the situation is going to be, because the time that's already running short is going to run even shorter. So let's not do that. But
yeah, and I would say that a feeling of urgency tends to accompany that too. So that's typically, excuse me, sorry, a little under the weather. So that's usually when I can tell something is stressing me out, and then when I would identify a thing as being stress.
So what
pretty intuitive for most people, I think.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So you talked about some of the physiological effects. You mentioned feeling kind of tight, like even shoulder, like shoulder tension, things like that. Do you feel any kind of like do you get sweaty palms or any kind of like that kind of
yeah,
or like increased heart rate?
That's never happened to me. I've never gotten sweaty palms.
Okay.
If I'm feeling like nervous in a social situation, my forehead will sweat a bit, but I don't get sweaty palms. It's like never happened to me. I'm sure my heart rate probably increases to some degree. Actually, a guy that I work with was talking about a former coworker of his that wore a Fitbit, and he was in a meeting, and I forget what he said they were talking about, but the dude's device, it was one of those with a screen on it. It kept giving him alerts because it was like, okay, there's no movement detected and your heart rate is 120 beats per minute.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
what the hell's going on here?
There's clearly something wrong here.
Yeah.
And I would say that that my heart rate probably increases a bit, but I don't know if it's necessarily noticeable to me. I'm sure it does.
I definitely, I know that it does for me. And it's interesting. I noticed it not by its presence, but by its absence when I was prescribed things that changed that. I was, there was a while whenever, going to a doctor for like anxiety, I was prescribed anti-anxiety medication and then also beta blockers to keep heart rate down in situations that were either like inducing anxiety or inducing stress. And it was weird, like noticing entering into these situations that I identified as stressful, my physiological response was very different. And I noticed like feeling, obviously calmer because of like my physiological response. It was interesting though. But.
And that's one thing about anxiety is that you can feel it even though there's a situation that isn't necessarily what most would think of as being stressful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's entirely possible. Sometimes if we blow things out of proportion and whatnot.
Well, do you think that stress can be the same way? Do you think that it doesn't necessarily have to be stemming from a situation that should warrant stress? Can we do it to ourselves? Does overthinking situations and stuff
you can I'm sure you can easily get worked up about something that's not necessarily that big of a deal, but I don't find walking into a group of like 7 or 8 people I don't know and jumping into a conversation with them is necessarily stressful, but I'm sure a lot of people do.
Yeah. Well, see, that's another one where I think the lines cross a lot. If you talk to a lot of people feeling that, where would they say, and what part of that would they say is stress, and what part of that would they say is anxiety?
Yeah, that's true. I think that often well, here, let me look up the actual definition of anxiety again, because I'm gonna get the two mixed up if I don't. Because if we're talking semantics here, I gotta get them words in front of me.
Well, they definitely do go hand in hand, which is it's interesting to me. And
yeah, I mean they do. But the other thing is that it's also all of it is pretty subjective for the most part. Yeah, so feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent. Because like what I think of is that stress occurs and anxiety is the result. Like that's how I think about it. I don't think that it's like, don't you hate it when people say that's comparing apples to oranges? That's like my least favorite thing that people say. It's like, where did that even come from? So I don't know that anxiety and stress are necessarily like, because I think of stress, the stressor itself, the thing that's causing the stress.
Yeah.
And I think that stress is the exertion of the discomfort.
Exactly.
That's the act of exerting the discomfort, and then anxiety is definitely the feeling of like what accompanies stress. But it also depends, because an event can be stressful, like your fucking oven catches on fire, and you don't actually have, like, I didn't feel particularly anxious because I was like, okay, this is a bit tricky. This is electric. I was like, so this could be, all right, I'm going to soak this cloth in this kitchen towel in water. So if necessary, if we need to smother this for some reason, I can do that. So like all of the preparedness about it, thinking about what I needed to do, like, I don't really know that I felt anxiety in that situation, even though it was certainly stressful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like not all stress is necessarily bad. And
exactly.
We talked about that on the last podcast. And I also had like a coworker, an older coworker, kind of give me some advice or some information about the idea of stress when I was going through a particularly stressful time at work recently. And that kind of like, it was sort of the idea that not all stress is bad necessarily. In fact, he was almost saying that all stress is good. That was almost kind of his idea.
Well, it is kind of like, I mean, so to grow in any way, it requires some sort of breakdown, right? Like, I mean, even if at the base, like physiological level, if you're just talking about, you want to grow your muscles, you have to damage them, cause little micro tears, and they're gonna grow back larger, right? Any kind of stress like that, I mean, that's a physical stress, but I think that it's going to be the same with this mental stress. Is every situation you go through that is putting you through some sort of strain or pressure or tension, which, I mean, again, the definition of stress, you're going to adapt to that and come out of it a slight bit, well, I didn't want to say better adapted, because I already said adapt to, but you're going to come out of it a slight bit more prepared to deal with that kind of situation in the future, right?
Yeah, and like oftentimes lifting weights that are heavy and difficult to move, like that's often called adaptive stress. Like it's a stress that causes your body to adapt, like, or an adaptive response, like growing muscle tissue, that kind of thing.
And do you agree that it's probably the same for the emotional and mental stress?
Well, it's a little bit different, because there are sort of biological processes that are completely out of your control that are occurring. Like
Yeah.
you decide that you want to lift the weights, but then everything that happens after that is completely like a total like physiological response to whatever just happened. So the idea that the thing is happening and there's some adaptation happening is the same, but I think that you obviously, in some cases, you have to be deliberate about whether or not it actually makes you better at something. Like if we're talking mental or emotional stress.
Okay. So rather than it just being passively from every situation you go through, you actually have to take an active role in saying, okay, how am I going to use this to my benefit? How will I learn from this or grow from this? Right.
Yeah, well, I think that the passive side of it, like that there will be some sort of adaptation that will happen just sort of naturally, so to speak,
Okay.
because there's plenty of stuff that happens like in your mind that you're not in control of.
Yeah.
But I think that you can help if you're conscious of what's happening too. Because I mean, it's like I can't even count how many times I've broken up with somebody, but I've gotten better at it every time.
That's good. Yeah.
And even when I wasn't being deliberate about being better at the whole thing, like I got better at it. So that's just one anecdotal sort of example for me, like where I was able to actually get better at something without necessarily trying. But there's other stuff where you need to figure things out and get in some kind of headspace, like when you fail, for instance.
Yeah. I like it. It just makes me chuckle thinking of the idea of like someone specifically setting out to get good at breaking up with people. Like, I am going to master the art of breaking up with someone. Like, I'm going to be the best dumper on the face of this planet.
Oh, I don't necessarily mean having the conversation. I mean all the emotional difficulty that happens afterward, really.
Gotcha. You mean handling it rather than, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I get what you're saying.
The breaking up with someone's easy. You just say, it's not me, it's you.
That's not always true, though.
And then you take no responsibility for any part of the relationship. And then everything ends.
That's the way to do it. Yeah. That sounds like the pro strat. Okay.
Yep, I learned that in a book by a well-known relationship expert who I'm not going to name because they don't exist.
Oh, okay. I was like, it makes me wonder.
And I didn't read that anywhere.
So, I guess like in the lens of not all stress being bad, and in fact, I forget how your coworker worded, how you said your coworker worded it, but it was basically like most or all stress is actually good then, depending on if you actually learn from it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he used the weightlifting metaphor too. He was like, it's like lifting weights. You're a weights guy, right? You lift it, you cause the stress, and then your body gets stronger. And he's like, yeah. It's like, and that happens every time you get stressed.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, every time stress happens, you always get stronger. He's like, it will always help. And a lot of that was because I think he thought I was about to resign. So I think part of that was because he was trying to like, no, don't quit your job. You help me out all the time. I need you to help me.
That's actually kind of funny.
It wasn't really, I mean, I think he thinks I'm a valuable asset to the company, but also like, I mean, I help him out a lot. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so in that regard though, is, because like the next big topic that I had was, kind of like dealing with or avoiding stress. And like avoiding, I would say then is probably not a good thing, right?
Well, I mean, based on his sort of like ideas, no, not really. But like I said, a lot of it was like it was like excessively positive, like very much like it will always make you stronger. You are a badass, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, by his logic, maybe, but for even like, because if you are stressed all the time, it's the same with lifting weights. Like you can't lift all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the actually getting stronger is not happening when you're lifting weights.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're getting stronger after that because your body's adapting to it. So I think like anything else, you need to recover. You need to have time to recover. Like, cause what I was doing, when stuff was crazy at work for like, that good, I don't know, 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
I would go through this ritual of like stress, de-stress, stress, de-stress. So it's like, I need to make sure that I am like unwound enough by the time I wake up tomorrow morning that I can get wound up again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's like the idea of sort of recovering from it and then going back kind of thing. And I can tell you now that most things don't seem as bad anymore. Like the stuff that seemed like a crisis before,
Mhm.
I'm not really worried about it.
Good.
And it's public information, so I can share it. I mean, all our investors are aware of it too.
Mhm.
My company had a ransomware attack where it's one of those things where if you don't know what it is, it encrypts data, and then it tells you that you need to pay such and such amount of money to get the decryption code for your data. And that happened to pretty much all the data in our company, not necessarily all of it, but quite a lot. And we ended up having to rebuild almost all of our IT infrastructure from scratch. And we did most of it in about 2.5, 3 months. So it was pretty crazy. People weren't able to do their jobs for a little while. The company itself, like outside of the IT organization, did really well. They continued to ship product. They continued to make things work. So they did a great job of actually handling the situation.
Mhm.
And I think the entire company had a lot they had to handle. And I think that a lot of the organization feels like, we were able to do a lot of this stuff without full usage of very important tools that we need to do our jobs, but we were still able to do it.
Mhm.
So now it's like everybody seems to have this idea that there's a lot more that they can handle because of like what they've seen that everybody kind of went through. It was difficult for everyone, not just us.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But it just got to the point where I knew like I'm going to get completely wound up. So I need to go home and I need to make sure that I eat properly and I need to watch or do something where I can completely just sort of shut off and chill out and then do it in time for the next day. So like it's almost like the adaptation was happening in between.
Yeah.
Like the same way as weightlifting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that brings me to I did kind of take a note while you were talking through that. You were talking about the necessary de-stressing. I like what the big dog said in chat that if you don't do that, you're going to, like as they said, go postal. I think that you need that de-stressing period, or else you can't just constantly wind and wind and wind. Eventually, something's going to break when there's that much tension.
No human can do that. And I think that the moment that my coworker was trying to tell me that stress is always good is not saying that like it's not necessarily that it's good. If it happened all the time, it wouldn't be.
Yes.
But in the occasions in which it does, it's a good thing because it can make you better at stuff.
So what were your go-to de-stress tactics then? I mean, you did say making sure you ate right, just watching something and kind of tuning out. But is there anything else specific? Like, I mean, are you one to like experiment with like meditation or anything like that, or?
Alcohol, lots of alcohol. I'm just kidding.
Well, I do have a note here of like unhealthy ways of dealing with stress.
Yeah. I mean, I did occasionally partake in the brews, but I mean, a lot of it was funny actually. My team jokingly were like sending each other pictures on a little WhatsApp chat we had of like what they were drinking. Like on the Friday after, part of our team worked the entire weekend, so it was the next Friday after that, and I was like, am I the only one that's doing this? And I sent a picture of a mountain bike. And I think everybody was like, oh, this fucking guy. Like they were all like, oh, you're so healthy, Mr. Fit Guy. Get on your mountain bike. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, I think that they all thought I was, to some degree, I was kind of trying to be a smartass.
A little bit, right?
Because I did ride that bike, but I definitely had a couple beers afterwards. So.
No, okay, yeah. Well, there's the balance, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't send anybody a picture of those because they were like Bud Light or something. So no one gets excited about that. It's like, ooh, Bud Light, my favorite. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just like, because I didn't think that lifting weights was necessarily a good thing because I thought that would have caused an additional amount of stress. So I didn't really lift very much then.
Okay.
And I didn't ride my bike for the first couple weeks, or sorry, because it was the end of the second week that I actually took the mountain bike out. And then after that, I didn't really mess around with the bikes much. And then I realized that on the weekends, it was probably a good thing to hop on the bike. But like during the week, like immediately after I didn't necessarily meditate. I just like watched funny or interesting stuff like on Netflix or whatever.
Okay.
Just stuff that didn't require a whole lot of thought. Like I watched some like, Dwayne Johnson movies. Like it's like, have you seen Skyscraper?
I have not, no.
It is awful, but you should definitely watch it.
I love that review. Like, it's awful and you need to watch it.
Well, it's like the point is like if you want to watch a movie that's just like crazy and you don't really need to think about anything, that's what you watch.
Yeah.
Pardon me, yawns. So like it was stuff like that. I didn't watch anything intellectual. I didn't watch like a documentary, nothing cerebral. I didn't read a whole hell of a lot. I read a little bit of Marcus Aurelius, but that was mostly to try to go to sleep.
yeah Gotcha.
It's like but in that situation, because of the extreme level of stress, lifting weights actually, it didn't seem like it would help much, even though maybe it would have. I don't know, I didn't try it.
Yeah, that's what, because I would say the opposite. I've noticed for me, and I think it may be a personal thing, different people respond to different things different ways, but I know that lifting for me greatly reduces stress, even though, like you pointed out, it is its own stress. It is such a different avenue that I think it takes my mind completely out of where the stress was coming from before, and actually helps me release in a completely different way. So I know for me it's definitely a benefit, but I could see your point of view that for you it may not have been, right?
Yeah, well, I think the biking stuff for me, especially mountain biking, because when you're going downhill and you're going real fast, like you have to kind of focus completely on what you're doing or you will crash. And then with the road bike on the road, like when stuff starts to hurt and starts to get difficult, you also have no choice but to focus on that. So it's sort of the same thing for both of us. It's just the thing with endurance cycling is that it lasts longer.
Yeah.
I can go out for like 3 hours and like, rack up, 30, 35 miles. And then that's a huge chunk of time. And a lot of the time after you're done with that, you're just too tired to freak out about anything else. It's like, I should be worried about Monday, but I can't feel my legs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to worry about that right now.
Well, that is like an interesting idea though, is, I mean, the brain really does have like limited bandwidth, right? And if you're throwing other stuff at it that it actually has to care about, like maybe you are literally limiting the amount of effort that it can put towards this other shit by just, literally putting blinders on and saying like, no, we're thinking about this right now. But
that is a very good point. That's awesome. You can actually take advantage for a little bit about the fact that your brain can't process that much at once.
Yeah.
It's pretty clever. Well, but one thing that I think is a problem is that, I mean, like there's plenty of times, because that was a couple months of time. There's plenty of nights where I just came home and I was like, I'm going to drink all 18 cans of this beer. Okay, maybe not that much. But the thing is that, like I want to be beneficial to anyone that's listening, but I also want to share the fact that I had difficulty. I think everybody, I don't know what it is about humans, but when the worst shit happens to us, we take the worst care of ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, right? Because I was going to go towards, I mean, so of course, okay. Like disclaimer mode, right? If you want to actually deal with stress in a proper way, I would say you want to avoid caffeine, alcohol, and nicotine. Like anything like that, you probably want to avoid. However, I also recognize that it's realistic that many of us do turn to things like that when we are stressed. So like to ignore that, I think would be disingenuous. With the alcohol, it's like it makes me wonder if we crave a altered state because we're not enjoying the mental state we're in right now, and we know that this is a way that, okay, we're either going to turn a part of our some of our brain off, or we're going to be in an altered state of conscious where we don't have to deal with this shit anymore.
I mean, I think that's true, and I think at some point we have escapism as a subject we'll talk about at some point. But I think that a lot of that's just a craving for being in an altered state. I'll tell you what though, if you want to alter your state, watch Skyscraper. You will turn right off. Like all the smart parts of your brain will just be like, nope, and all the dumb parts will be like, yes, more fire.
Exactly. I like what the big dog just said again. Yeah, I think craving numbness. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's because it's weird. It's almost like trying to escape your own brain.
Exactly. Yeah. And normally you can't. Your entire experience is within this brain. But if you can change how it operates for a little bit, you can get out of how it normally confines you, I guess.
And the unfortunate thing is that, I mean, I didn't get sloshed during any of this, but if you get demolished, the moment you start vomiting, you will completely focus on the thing that's been stressing you out. Like if you'll be sitting there leaning over a freaking toilet, puking your damn guts out, feeling like an idiot, hyper focused on the thing that was freaking you out. And oftentimes when you do that, even if you don't like end up vomiting or anything like that, you will wake up, and the moment you wake up, the first thing you'll think about is whatever was stressing you out the night before, and you'll have a terrible headache, and light will upset you, and loud noises will be bad, and you'll stay inside all day, and you probably will wake up at 1 p.m.
I was going to say, you said you didn't do that, but a lot of that sounds oddly specific.
I've lived a long time. True. I didn't do it recently, but I've definitely done that on several other occasions.
True. Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I've gotten better at dealing with heartbreak. I didn't used to be very good at it, and plenty of dumb shit. I don't know very many people that can learn anything other than the hard way. But I guess the bottom line is that stuff won't really help. Like, I mean, like if nicotine, something like that, smoking. I actually almost started smoking during that period of time. Like I've actually quit like 8 or 9 times. When work got crazy, I got really close to starting smoking again, and I've actually done that in other situations in the recent past within the last couple of years. But that time I did not, so I'm really glad that I didn't.
Good job, man.
But it's the same thing with nicotine. It's like, I mean, you'll do your little like, oh yeah, I'm outside. It's cold. Now I smell bad, and the stress is still there.
Yep.
So it's like you're not really getting much out of that either.
Well, that's the thing with all of the chemical ways that you can deal with stress. I mean, there's tons. Everyone, picks their own poison, right? But I think you hit the nail on the head, is that it's just a temporary Band-Aid solution. You're not dealing with the actual core of the issue. You're just trying to numb your symptoms to it for a little bit. And in all reality, maybe sometimes that is beneficial. It's not the best way to deal with it. I'm trying to think of a situation where it like could actually be beneficial, or is it always literally just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's ever a good idea. It's not going to be something that I want to actually endorse or suggest that someone do.
I think if anything we tried to say about any of that being beneficial would be more of like almost a rationalization really than anything else.
Probably, yeah.
We don't want to give anybody any arguments or any fuel for that behavior.
Where my mind went, which again, I'm not trying to condone anything, but where my mind went is if you are stressed about something that at that point in time you can't actually do anything about, maybe finding a way to help yourself take a break from it could be beneficial. And until the next chance you do have to actually do something about it. But I think you're right though. I think that is just rationalizing. I think that finding a way to healthily deal with that emotion yourself would be the biggest growth.
Maybe just play a video game instead.
Yeah, I'm down with that. So yeah, I mean, I guess like you want to avoid the external chemicals that would numb your stress. And there's another thing we've talked about is the finding benefit in the discomfort, right? Just because you're feeling stressed, just because you're in a stressful situation is not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe dealing with that feeling, learning how to cope with it yourself is a very beneficial thing. Rather than taking away that learning experience from yourself by trying to numb it or trying to deflect, right?
Yeah, I think that you learn a hell of a lot more from it if you experience the whole thing completely. Yeah, I agree.
The next suggestion for dealing with stress, it actually is indulging in physical activity from the list that I've got here. So which, yeah, I mean, we've both talked about doing that. I mean, your avenue is more the endurance sports. Mine, I like to lift the heavy things. Well, I guess I shouldn't say heavy for me. Probably not heavy for many people, but heavy for me. And I think, I mean, there is a physiological side of that too, where stress is your body is building up like cortisol levels and stuff, right? And you can lower that by vigorous physical activity. Even though you don't control a lot of those responses that your body has, you can fight it, right?
Well, I mean, fight it in what regard though? Like what way?
Well, like, I mean, like I'm saying, if you know that stressful situations will increase your cortisol levels, and you know that physical activity will decrease cortisol levels, you know, it's like there's something physically you can do to counteract that, even though you can't actually control, like, it's not like you have a switch inside yourself that you can say, okay, I can control my cortisol levels, I'm going to lower them. It's, you know, it's like, it's a,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. There's like an activity you can go to change the what you know is physically going on.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's one way to do it. And also, I mean, like, you know, obviously this is what we do, but there's all kinds of stuff, like whatever people happen to enjoy, if it's playing pool or going to a sporting event or whatever. I mean, anything that they can do to help. But obviously physical activity is always good, I think.
Oh yeah. I would say so. And I think the next one on the list that I have here is as important, if not more important, and goes hand in hand. But I think adequate sleep. I have learned so much in the past like year or two about how important sleep is. And the more I learn, it blows me away that, I mean, it kind of sucks we're stuck in this physical body that needs it, because it's like, I mean, I already feel, I mean, our day-to-day life in the world that we live in now is way too fucking busy, right? We don't have enough time to do any of the shit that we need/want to do. And then the fact that we're supposed to spend basically a third of our entire life in an unconscious state is kind of bullshit, right? Like, especially when you realize, like, okay, I can get away with 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep when I'm really supposed to get 8. And you may not, you may feel fine the next day, but you may not recognize what you're actually doing to yourself, and I think the stress that you're putting your body through, really, the physical stress, right?
I mean, not sleeping properly can screw up all kinds of things, particularly your endocrine system. I mean, your hormones get all kinds of fucked up if you don't sleep properly.
Yeah.
But I think a major problem with that is that we're surrounded by this, like, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's like, oh, you know, I only slept 6 hours a night. Some people say they need 8 hours. I say sleep a little faster. That might have been the worst Arnold impression ever, but it's like sleep a little fast. Oh my god,
it wasn't bad.
But that's the thing that drives me crazy, is that people don't realize that, you know, it's like less than 1% of all humans actually require less than 7 to 8 hours of sleep. It's an extreme rarity that those people exist. But there's also, like, it seems that, and it's funny because I actually listened to somebody talking a lot about sleep recently, that going to bed earlier in the evening tends to be better for people for the most part. The earlier in the evening you go to bed, typically the better off you are. Also going to bed at the same time, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing, that you go to bed at the same time every night, you wake up at the same time every morning. That also helps. And also, you know, making sure that you're like in a relaxed state when you like get in bed or before you go to bed, doing something that can like help you wind down, turning your fucking phone off.
Yes. Yeah. That's a big one.
Turning off the TV, getting off the computer, you know, logging off of World of Warcraft.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Because I think that it's pretty well understood that blue lights they tend to keep you awake for longer. They sort of increase your energy level. I don't know exactly how they affect you, but I think it's pretty well understood that the blue lights from those devices can be a problem.
Well, yeah,
I use a blue light to wake up in the morning.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, they mess up your like circadian rhythm. Like your body, you know, it's only supposed to be getting blue lights in the early part of the day from like natural sunlight. So the way our body like developed or evolved to understand light, it's like blue light is like, oh, this is morning, we're supposed to be awake. And it's like, yeah, it can mess up your melatonin production. It can mess up a lot of like the internal rhythm. Yeah.
And also that whole night mode thing, that doesn't fucking count, guys. It doesn't. Turn the shit off. Like night mode, it makes it warmer, warmer, but it's still cool light. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not taking some of or most of the blues out of it doesn't make it any different. It's not.
Exactly.
It doesn't change anything.
We're not sponsored, but I would recommend maybe like blue blockers, or there's plenty of glasses they sell that filter out blue light. And those are apparently very effective and beneficial to use in the evening hours while you're winding down. You can even then, watch some TV and stuff as you're winding down, and it, blocking all of the blue light from yourself. So brings me to I like Big Dog's question. I don't want to answer it now. The Big Dog is asking, how much sleep do you guys get per night? I at this point in my life, I am not getting nearly as much as I should. I am spreading myself a little too thin with the things that I'm doing. Probably on average, maybe 6.5 hours. There was a time, there was probably like a good year or so where I was very good at that, and I was getting 8 to 8.5 hours every single night. And I liked what I was doing, but at the same time, most people pointed out to me that I was going a little overboard, and that I was maybe too obsessive about the health part. So I've tried to cut that back, and I don't know if now I've gone too far to the other. I wouldn't say I've gone too far to the other side, but trying to find that balance. But I am working on things now that take up so much time. I am letting the sleep part suffer a little bit, but I would say I average probably around 6.5 hours. What about you?
7.5 to 8 most nights. I try to make a point to get that much. And to clarify, the people that told you to chill weren't talking about how much sleep you were getting. It was maybe going to bed at 7 p.m., waking up at 4 in the morning, because, some things were maybe kind of getting missed. But at no point, like, at least for me, when I talked about it, like, it wasn't necessarily about the sleep part. It was just about the, social life and having some enjoyment of living. Not to the point like where, because I don't believe our sole purpose is to experience pleasure. But yeah, I mean, dude, yeah, that one thing for sure, like, yeah, you should get on that, man, really. But there have been times in my life where I've only gotten like 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night, and at those times, like, I can remember being pretty depressed and pretty anxious most of the time about most things, and everything just felt wrong, and I was really short with people, and I was unable to like handle anything, like stress included. So yeah, I mean, it's, just out of consideration, man. I mean, it's not like you're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night, but still, more would be better, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know what I can do. It's like, if I'm wanting to put effort towards like the whole streaming thing, it's like I've got to, the time's got to come from somewhere.
You got to make the sleep a priority.
So are you telling me that I should give up on this? Is that your advice?
Yeah, I mean, I understand your rhetoric, but yes.
Really?
Seriously, like if this is infringing on your health, then stop.
Well, I don't feel like it's infringing on my health though.
But if it's infringing on your sleep, it's infringing on your health.
That's fair. That's fair, huh? Do you not think that it's possible that time periods? Go ahead.
There's something else that you can take out of your schedule that's not this, to like make time for that, because I forget who it was, but it was I don't know if it was like an author or a speaker was mentioning, stop saying I don't have time, start saying it's not a priority. Because there's all kinds of stuff that people don't think about, that they can definitely like give up to make time for things. We all do it, all of us do. Because like anytime I hear myself saying I don't have time, I stop and I think, wait a second, do I really though? Did you really have to, like, if it's at work, I'm like, did you really have to stop and have that conversation with one of the lab technicians about whether or not the new Star Wars film is going to be worth the shit, or how cool it would be if they made a Nightwing movie. Does that shit really matter? Did you really need to go on like a 5-minute rant with that dude in the warehouse about how the Battlestar Galactica remake is way better than the original? Did you really have to have that debate with that chemist in R&D about the plural of octopus?
Octopodes?
It's like, like, no, you didn't need to do any of that shit. You did have the time to do the stuff that you needed to do at work today. You used it for other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, it's me like, you know, looking at things and trying to like objectively like figure out and solve it. And, you know, it's like, yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, you don't want to make time for it. That's fine, but you probably should.
Well, no, I don't think it's that I don't want to. I think it's that I don't know. I guess in my mind it's that
it's not a priority.
Well, no, I guess what I'm trying to say is like in my mind it's that there could be a benefit to a limited period of time going through a time of that to try to work towards something else, I guess. You know, it's like I feel like there's a lot of people that like, you know, maybe they know that like, okay, I'm going through college right now. I need to work 2 jobs. I'm not really going to be sleeping well, but it's these next 4 years. I'm going to get this done. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know that it's not a long-term, like, oh, it's not my entire life I'm going to be getting 6 hours of sleep, or in my entire life I'm going to be, you know, pulling all-nighters like this. But it's just like, all right, it's what I need to do to get through this to try to make something happen.
Yeah, but it's the same as everything else we're talking about. Like, if you're going to do that for a period of time, then you also need to give yourself the option. Because the thing is like, that's not triggering any kind of adaptive response in you. Forget what I said. I'm just gonna scratch that, because I don't think that not getting enough sleep is triggering any kind of adaptive response. It's not gonna make you better at anything. So, I mean, if that's something that someone needs to do to achieve a goal, like, I get it, but it's not something that should last. Like, I mean, look at a picture of Elon Musk 5 years ago and look at him now. Yeah. He doesn't sleep very much. Guy's stressed out all the time. This job is killing that man. You can just tell by his demeanor. You can tell by his physical appearance, like that's taking everything the guy's worth. Because he doesn't ever give himself an opportunity to like stop or slow down.
But it may be worth it for $40 billion, right?
He tried to get high with Joe Rogan that one time, and everybody gave him shit. I was like, no, let Elon Musk get high. Like,
yeah, that was pretty funny.
He needs to unwind somehow. Jesus. I mean, not that I'm condoning that. I'm mainly making a joke, but.
Well, I mean.
But yeah, it's like, I guess I'm just. It's funny because like you raised the sleep point, but I guess I'm kind of really going with it here. Yeah. We try to practice what we preach on here. So like anything that we say, we typically try to live by it, and we try to, you know, talk about things in the most honest way possible. Like I didn't have to tell you guys that I've handled stress badly and gotten drunk instead of doing what I should be doing, but I have. Not saying you should do it. Definitely don't.
Yeah. It's the more the do as I say, not as I do thing, right?
Yeah, but like, well, because you know, it's like people do dumb shit. We all do.
Oh yeah.
And we can learn how not to do dumb shit by doing dumb shit.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess you really need to just, at least like for you, I would say like we kind of made this a little bit too personal now, but just, I mean, you know, you should really be aware of how it's making, like how you're feeling, like what your body feels like day to day, and you'll be able to tell pretty quickly if you need to get more sleep or if the lack of sleep is taking its toll on you. In fact, you can probably already tell.
Yeah, I've felt great. That's the weird thing is I don't notice. I mean, I do have like around like, you know, 2:30 or 3 at, you know, at work, I get kind of like drowsy, but I think I'm just kind of bored. You know, like I've always had that. Even the times when I was getting, you know, 8.5 hours of sleep every night and everything, that always would happen. But I have not noticed any negative effects though. But then again, it's only been the past, when did I start streaming? Like 5 months ago, 6 months ago or so. So it's really only been the past like 6 months. Yeah. So I don't know how long it's supposed to take to catch up with me. So I may be, you know, starting to feel that sometime in the near future, but.
I mean, and there are lots of studies on the adverse effects of sleep deprivation. There's no shortage of those.
Well, that's the thing that worries me too.
Well documented.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that worries me too, is like I'm going by my feeling, and I feel like it's been like worded to me before where sleep deprived is almost the same as like drunk. Well, I mean, in multiple ways. I mean, there's a reason why they even say like, you know, if you're drowsy driving, you're basically like driving drunk or whatever. But it's like how drunk people tend to overestimate their abilities or whatever. I think that like I've heard that sleep deprived is the same thing, and you may not even be noticing the effects that it's having on you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, because I mean, your mind is not really running at 100%, I think, when you're tired. So it's it's possible that you could have all kinds of lapses in judgment and fallacies in your perception. But I was actually trying to find this one quote, and here it is. It's Leonard Bernstein. It's to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time.
I like that. Yeah.
So I think that's that's kind of like one way to say that, like, you know, if you should maybe, and not necessarily like personally for you, but I think in many cases, like sometimes I think we need to accept the challenge that we can still get this thing done and get enough rest. That I think it's more to boast about when someone can continue to take care of themselves and also achieve what they're looking to achieve, as opposed to, I only sleep 4 hours a night, look at me.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that it's not something that it drives me nuts when people brag about like coming to work sick.
I hate
like
that. Yeah.
Working out injured.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, to me, it's like, I take care of myself like shit.
Yep.
Hell yeah. Like, so tough.
Why does our culture glorify that so much? Like the whole like, you only work 40 hours a week. I'm working 65. It's like, is that a good thing?
I think a lot of it's just like the leftover, like from the Industrial Revolution. There's a lot of like a work culture in the U.S. And I think there's still a lot that exists there. Maybe just a thought. That, you know, the sweat of your brow kind of thing, you know, John Smith, those who shall not work will not eat, that kind of thing. That sort of stuff. And then, you know, motivation culture, all the stuff that's out there for, you know, like, go push hard, achieve your goals, you know, like that kind of thing.
Well, who said the quote that you brought up?
That was Leonard Bernstein.
Yes.
I couldn't remember who said it, and it took me for freaking ever to find it, but I wanted to say the exact thing he said.
But I do think that there's a lot said there, and I think your example of Elon Musk like really points to that, where it's like, I mean, that guy, like, you know, whatever you think about him, I think it's like kind of hard to argue that he isn't doing great things, whether or not you're pro what he's doing or against what he's doing, as far as just great as in monumental. The guy has done a lot for the world, like big things. And I think that it does take, sometimes an extraordinary amount of time and effort to do those things that may be, like you're saying, like actually to the detriment of that person. It maybe it's worth it, and maybe it's not sometimes. And like, that's interesting.
I think the boasting should come from using very efficiently every moment of proper waking hours, as opposed to I barely sleep kind of thing. Yeah. Like if someone manages their time, truly manages their time as well as they can get a proper amount of sleep and get the stuff done that they need to do. And if they're not, and they are in a position where they can delegate those tasks, they need to.
Maybe. I don't know. I would argue that there are think of someone. What about someone like honestly struggling to make ends meet, having to work 2 full-time jobs? You can't sleep 8 hours on that. And if they have to do that for a few years to get out of some sort of crazy debt or something, it's like, I mean, there's nothing you can do to better manage your time.
Also doesn't have a choice.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, that's the point that I'm making, though, is I think,
but plenty of people do.
Well, I mean, you've got a choice, right? The choice is like, there's always a choice. That person could just choose to not do that, and maybe they become homeless, maybe they lose, you know, like there is a choice. It's not a good choice, and it is, you know, you are kind of forced one way or the other, but
yes, I mean, when it's do or die, some people do choose die.
Exactly, yeah.
A lot of people choose do.
Yeah.
I think that most people do.
Yeah. So that is tough. And so yeah, I mean, back to the point though. So I mean, one of the best things you can do for yourself to help your response to stress, the way that you manage, and I don't think manage is the right word I want to go with there. The way that you adapt to stress, I think is sleep. I think that getting more sleep, getting enough sleep is a big important thing. The next one on my list here is, now I think that you said that you haven't done much like this. It's like different relaxation techniques such as meditation, things like that. Have you had any experience with that in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple of things. There's what do they call it? There's one method I think that they call like a body scan, where you essentially, when you lay down to go to sleep, you sort of focus on different parts of your body.
Yeah.
Like, how does my back feel? How are my shoulders? Are they relaxed? What about my neck? And how's my heart beating? And my lungs, what's my breath like? And you sort of like focus on that stuff like in your own mind, and that's a good way to sort of get your mind off of other things. Actually, I learned that from someone I dated a while ago. That's the closest thing to it, I think.
Okay.
I do have a couple like I did screw with a guided meditation app on my phone for a little
Nice.
while,
Okay.
which was pretty helpful. It's just lots of the whole like mind clearing stuff. Like, it starts out with paying attention to what's around you, like all the sounds and the smells and the feels and the stuff, like with your eyes closed. And then it sort of moves into, from focusing on that stuff to just sort of like clearing your thoughts and things like that. So that's all that I've really messed with that stuff.
Yeah, actually, I very often use guided meditation like for sleep things to try to like unwind and go to sleep. And there's a lot that do that same it's more than a body scan technique in the ones that I've heard, because it's every part of the body that it goes to that you're focusing on, it has you tense it as much as possible and then relax that specific muscle group too, and then like work your way up and down your body doing that, and just trying to like focus on it's almost kind of like the mind muscle connection that you do like when weightlifting, where you physically, like specifically say, okay, I'm focusing on this one muscle group and how it's contracting, and you're kind of doing that I've found to be incredibly relaxing though. That has helped me fall asleep like a lot quicker than I used to. I really like
pretty much all the stuff that I'm doing is when I'm trying to go to sleep too. It's the same. Yeah.
Gotcha.
We have the same timing there, at a proper time to get 8 hours of sleep.
Yes. What do you feel about talking to someone about stress?
Depends on the thing, and it depends on how. It depends on how it is that you're speaking. I mean, what do you mean in particular?
I guess like almost in like a therapeutic sense. Have you ever, is your ability to deal with stress like pretty well handled, or have you ever had stress situations that you felt were out of your control that you had to go like to your therapist or anything and talk about like and try to get help with managing?
There's times like I don't know if it was specifically with stress. I think that a lot of the time with stress, I've sort of chosen to handle it on my own, or at least used other things that I'd learned. And talking to a friend is okay too. Is, for me at least, in my opinion, that it's better if the goal is to solve something.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in the idea of venting. I think just like throwing all the stuff that's happening out there and essentially complaining to somebody about it, which is all that venting really is. It seems idle to me. Like, it doesn't do anything. I think that if you talk about the thing that's stressing you out with the goal of finding a solution, then I think that's really helpful. But I think if it's just complaining, all that does is like what we were just talking about with meditating. You focus elsewhere, you put your mind on something else. If you're just sitting there complaining about it, then all that does is put your mind on that thing for an extended period of time with no helpful result.
You don't think there could be any benefit to just simply like getting it out versus keeping it in?
Not really. getting the thing out, I guess, is beneficial, but only if getting it out results in something positive. Like, I'm not gonna talk to someone that's just gonna nod their head and be like, uh-huh, yeah, mm-hmm, yeah. He said what? No. Like, I'm not, that's not gonna do anything for me. And I don't want someone that's gonna sit there and like validate my feelings on something. Like, yeah,
Gotcha.
you should be mad. You should be pissed, bro. Like, that's not, it's like, yeah, I would prefer, if I'm talking about it, to get a solution to the issue. And if there's not a solution, then I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know that because when the idea is, it's like, okay, this is maybe a weird thing to say, but you know, in Iron Man, where like Tony Stark has this thing where his suit will absorb like force or power from something, and then it'll like redirect it back. I think there's a scene in one of the Avengers films where he gets hit with something, and then his suit's at like 400% capacity, and he essentially fires it back at like Loki or somebody.
Oh,
like
okay, you're mixing up two suits. Black Panther's suit does it with kinetic physical energy. Iron Man's suit was able to recharge itself from a bolt of lightning from Thor, and it like overcharged his crystals, and he was at like 400% capacity. Yeah.
Okay, well then, I don't think of it as, I guess maybe it's more like Black Panther then. I don't think of it as somehow there's this energy in you that's magically coming out and you're projecting it out and it's no longer in you. You're still fucking thinking about it. It's still in your mind. Nothing's changed.
True. Yeah.
Like, I think I don't know. Like, for me, it's difficult for me to think of it as anything other than bitching, honestly.
Gotcha.
Because to me, like, the difference between like complaining or bitching or whatever and anything that's like therapeutic or beneficial, because you can have a therapeutic conversation with a friend.
Yeah.
Obviously it's better if you're paying someone that's doing it as a living, but I think that there's really no benefit to it. Like, there's no like weird like metaphysical thing that's happening where you're releasing the thing into the world by talking about it. That's silly.
Yeah.
So, and I think that when people think about it as getting it out, that's what they think that's happening. But no, it's not. Like, not only is it still in there, like in your mind, now you've focused on it for a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I
like,
could see
for me,
that. Yeah.
If it's something that you can handle and there's a solution, then I think I view it as a positive thing. But I just don't, if it's just idle complaining, I don't really see it as a benefit. What are your thoughts on that? I mean,
no, yeah, I definitely agree. I think that I guess like the idea, what I thought of as venting, I guess is like less along the lines of complaining and more along the lines of using that as an opportunity to talk my way through a situation, which is then helping me think my way through it. Which I think it's like it's almost what you're saying about having like a therapeutic conversation like with a friend. But a lot of times, like, the way that my inner dialogue works, it's not as organized as like just a conversation or a verbal sentence, right? It's more like snippets and kind of more frantic. And if I don't take the time to have a thoughtful, constructed dialogue, it may not give me the opportunity to think through something in the way that it should. Versus if I like actually sit and talk it out with someone, it makes me actually construct the like deconstruct the situation and then construct it into like, okay, well, what is the actual plan of action? So there is something more beneficial to it. Yeah.
In that situation, I think that, at least in my opinion, I think that would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny but if you think about like the actual idea of what it means to vent,
mm-hmm.
like you are venting, like, for instance, if there's a reaction in a chemical plant that creates non-toxic gas that's a byproduct, and it doesn't actually belong like in the reactor, it'll be vented off. Like, it actually leaves. So like when we think of venting as somehow it's going away, it's really not.
Yes.
But I think that some people do need to think about things out loud. And if that's something that, helps you think through something, then that can be a good thing.
Yep.
As long as it can sort of get you to a solution. It's funny because a lot of the time, if you look at what a lot of therapists do, a lot of the time they'll just let the client talk, and many times they'll just figure it out.
Yeah. Sometimes they'll ask like leading questions to a certain spot, right?
They'll ask a really constructive question and then just let the client go.
Yep.
And then they'll keep talking and they'll talk and talk. Oh, wait a second. And they just get there themselves.
Yeah.
And for some people, maybe it's like, because, you know, some people can absorb information better by like listening to an audiobook than reading something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that some people can maybe think better by like hearing themselves with their voice, like say the things and go through the thoughts.
Yeah. I'm definitely that way. No, it makes perfect sense because I know that I'm definitely that way. Whenever I try to, if I try to just sit and think about something by myself, it's tough for me. Like I was saying, like with my inner, I call it inner dialogue, but I guess it's inner monologue, right? Because there's no one else there. But
no, there's tons of, there's a whole committee in there.
Well, yeah, true. But
I got one too. It's okay.
True.
We're not crazy.
But it was so with my inner dialogue though, it's like I mean, I feel like it does make me sound kind of crazy, but it's like if I sit and think, it is very tough for my thoughts to be as organized as they would be if I were just speaking out loud. It's not like I don't know if it's the same for you, but like when you sit and think in your head, is it basically your same voice and at like in a normal conversational way, or is it more fragmented, disjointed? Like how does that work inside your head?
Oh, sorry. I feel like every podcast, my cat is some kind of distracting.
It happens.
Little dude's got a hairball.
Oh, poor guy.
I was like, is there a rat dying in my, oh no, it's just my cat. Oh goodness. What were we talking about?
I was asking about like your inner dialogue.
Oh, what is so I don't know. Like, I guess sometimes I'll end up saying something I don't know. It's more like work problems.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to figure something out, sometimes I'll say something briefly, like kind of out loud, but quiet enough to where it's to myself.
Okay.
And I don't know, like I don't really understand what you're asking. Like, are you the perceived sound of my inner dialogue? Like, I don't. Are you asking if that's me or if it's Venom? Like,
no,
I don't like.
No, I mean, no, not that it, like if it's. I just mean like, okay, if you're to sit and think about an issue, let's say you need to. There's some problem you need to think your way through. If you sit alone and think about it, are your thoughts the pace that would be like a normal conversational tone? Like it is the thought you. I don't know. Like you can't say hear it, but you know what I mean. All like right. Versus just a collage of like words and feelings and shit. Like.
I understand now. Yeah, I don't think I listen particularly well. That's the problem. Gotcha. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. It depends on the thing. I think that if I can focus on one problem, mm-hmm. then it is essentially more or less at the same pace in which I would speak naturally. But if I don't focus on one problem, it's everything and all things at one time.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better.
If I put real deliberate effort into thinking about one thing, then I can focus on that thing and think about it at a pretty normal pace.
Okay.
But if I just let my mind go, it's a very exhausting place to be.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Okay. So that I felt like I was a little strange there, but that makes me feel a little better. Either that or maybe we're both just really strange. I would believe. But either situation there, I would believe to be true.
I think we're both more normal and more strange than we think.
Ooh, I like that. Oh, is it because strange is normal? Do you think we're all strange?
I think people are strange when you're a stranger.
But that is kind of weird because if everyone's strange, then no one is strange, right?
True. It's like if you need to get a degree to differentiate yourself from everyone, and everyone should go get a degree, well then you're not different anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's true. So have we touched on when stress is good versus when stress is bad? I don't know if we really specifically talked about that.
No, we haven't. My thoughts on that would be like we were saying, it's almost always good depending on how you manage and deal with it, right? At least that's my opinion. I don't think that it's like the stress itself will either be good or bad. It's really your response to the stress will be good or bad. Do you think that there are stress that is objectively good or bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're right about how you choose to deal with it, because I think that if you stress will only break you if you kind of give up, I guess.
Okay.
That there's a certain point where you should take a break, but you should always go back and tackle the thing. But I think that there's certain individuals where sometimes something stressful happens and they will feel like they just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll just kind of stop. But I think it's, if you choose to rise to the occasion, so to speak, you can kind of get there. If it involves work, that's one thing, because we talked mostly about like work and things like that. But yeah, if someone dies, then that can be a difficult thing and that can be stressful, but it's not too much because you're going to get through it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like work and challenges are the only place where you can really give up. That's the only place where stress is going to break you necessarily. I will say though, for like
relationships too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. And there's certain relationships where, because, well, relationships can be difficult, but they shouldn't be primarily stressful.
Yes.
Relationships should be something that requires some work, but are primarily the thing that helps you with this stuff. That can be the person that you talk to that helps you solve problems.
Yeah.
That can be the person that you go and think out loud to. That can be the individual that, assists you with being able to relax when things are not going so great. And every now and then that can be the person that tells you that they just spent $3,000 on a pair of shoes. And you can be like, what? And then there's some stress there.
Yeah, if you guys share a bank account, that's probably very stressful, right?
Yeah, which, I've never had a shared bank account with anyone, thank God. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's a lot about the way that you handle it. But I will say that for young children, that they're at a point, because we're talking mainly from an adult's perspective, but for young children, there's a point where you can stress them to the point where they just lose it. And that can cause problems going forward. That can cause difficulties in being well adjusted emotionally. And it can cause problems in relationships later on. It can cause problems with confidence later on. There's a lot of things that, someone's just not ready for it. Also, I mean, there's situations where, in a very green, like combat Marine or soldier that hasn't really done a lot can be put into a situation that gets them killed.
Yeah.
Or they make a mistake that gets other people killed.
Yeah.
And that's a situation where sometimes you don't have any say in what happens. So it's a situation where you have to rise to the occasion to survive. And that's a very scary thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a very scary thought for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Some stress can kill you.
Definitely.
Ask Bruce Wayne's parents.
Too soon. Way too soon.
What?
I'm just kidding. But no, yeah, I guess you are definitely right with that. I do think the biggest part, I mean, well, I guess I'm calling myself right too, because you called me right. So in a roundabout way, I'm just saying, yeah, I'm a genius. But no, I do think that a big part of it is
let me toot your horn. Boop boop.
Oh, thank you. That was a good toot.
Good.
But yeah, I do think a big part of it is how you deal with it, what you make of it. And like you're saying, it requires the recovery. And I think that's a big part that maybe a lot of people neglect or don't necessarily think about, that stress. Yeah, I mean, you hear the word stress and you think of it as negative, right? I think that most people have that kind of that mentality that stress is almost like a bad word. It's not an emotion that you, or not a feeling that you want to feel, not a situation you want to be in, not something you want to experience. It's almost like a necessary evil. I think though, a lot of what we're getting to with this podcast and a lot of places where we're going in the future, we are talking about the value in discomfort, the growth that can come from putting yourself through something that is, I mean, honestly stressful in different ways, physically, mentally, emotionally. If you allow yourself the proper time and thought, I guess, to figure it out and to move forward and to recover from it, I think it is almost always going to be beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think if you allow yourself time to adapt, or if you allow yourself the opportunity afterward to grow, that I think you will end up with the stress being a good thing.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure you do something to chill out, to relax, which
Yes.
we did a podcast on. Look that one up.
Sure. Yeah. Man. So what's geez, what time is it? Yeah, we are actually getting there. Do you have any closing thoughts? Do you have any final thoughts? Did we not touch on anything you wanted to touch on? Jeez.
Did you already throw your final thoughts in here?
Let me see.
Because I feel like the last thing you said was closing the positive or negative stress thing.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of.
Dude, I got a Frank Herbert quote today, dude. You really don't want to go second after this.
Well, no, I know I don't want to go second. That's why I'm like frantically flipping through notes trying to find if I had a final thought together. I didn't really. No. Let's just just take it away. What's your final thoughts tonight?
Okay, this is from the book Dune by
Nice.
Frank Herbert.
Speaking of, I'm excited for the new Dune.
They're making a new Dune.
Yes, you haven't heard of it?
Oh my God!
Oh man!
Let's
sorry.
talk about in post after. Oh my God! We might need to edit this out. You know, whatever. We do it live. Yes, I didn't know there was a new Dune. That sounds exciting to me too. I had no idea. Okay, so it's from Dune, Frank Herbert. The mind can go either direction under stress, toward positive or toward negative, on or off. Think of it as a spectrum whose extremes are unconsciousness at the negative end and hyperconsciousness at the positive end. The way the mind will lean under stress is strongly influenced by training.
I like that. Yeah. Get out there and train. So with that being said,
Frank Herbert.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So with that being said, we have reached the end of another episode of the Metacast podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the conversation, please hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with what we're doing here, and also comment below and let us know your thoughts and experiences with stress. How do you manage stress? Do you recover from it properly? Let us know. If you're interested in further taking part in the conversation or even joining us as a guest on a future episode, please join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode live Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great week.